Hi, Livin Guardians, Unseen Inquisitor here. And Destiny 2 has a lot of exotic equipment at our disposal. From armor to weaponry, every season, since the first expansion forward, anytime new content, new season comes about, we tend to get an increase in exotics in some fashion. Invariably, this means while some exotics will raise to the top and there will be some battling going on for your attention, there are also those exotics that are forgotten. Whether for a long time or recently forgotten, depending upon the meta shift and whatever else. That's what we're here to discuss today. Forgotten exotics. I'll be going over a particular exotic in each video, breaking down what the exotic does, what is the reason I think for its being forgotten, and give my thoughts on how it can be brought up a bit without power creeping and just making the next latest and greatest thing that has to be overcome, but rather how to bring it into people's attention and make it a potential for it being a part of your arsenal in some capacity. So with that said, if you happen to stumble across this forgotten sector of the internet, I encourage you to pull up a chair, hang out, and share your thoughts in the comment section down below and be part of the conversation of the particular exotic in question. And with that being the case, let's jump into it. Alright, so for our first installment of Forgotten Exotics, we're taking a look at an exotic kinetic primary weapon in the form of Suros Regime. Suros Regime is from Destiny 1 and it made its way into Destiny 2 within the first year of Destiny 2. And it is an auto rifle that has some pretty cool looks. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over aesthetics real quick, and then we'll go into what makes the weapon tick. Then I'll discuss thoughts as we see it in action in regards to why it might be forgotten, as well as some thoughts and things that could potentially help out the weapon without power creeping it into a problem. So with that said, the Suros Regime default look isn't bad. It's almost kind of, the coloration to me speaks of, I don't want to say retro coloration, it doesn't really make much sense in the context, but this definitely looks like something that maybe would be designed color-wise in the 70s or 80s to me anyway. I don't know, maybe I'm weird. But anyways, its default look is different in Destiny 1. It has two different default looks in Destiny 1. But in any case, we also have the coupe de main, however I want to pronounce that. Gives it a pretty cool, clean look. The gray nitrate, or gray nitrite if you like that more almost carbon fibery stylistic thing on there. We have a standard bearer, which looks pretty cool too. Gotta like a dragon. And I like using Suros Chrome, so that's what I use. I just think it cleans up the lines. It still kind of got that retro futuristic look, almost something like you would expect maybe from the 50s design aesthetic wise, between like the accent pieces of the barrel and this extra little MacGuffin. Anyways, let's see what makes this weapon tick. So the Suros Regime is an auto rifle. So as far as auto rifles go, it is pretty standard, right? Not in a bad way. It's got stats that are not bad. They're very serviceable, and they make this weapon feel pretty good overall. And that's what a lot of the the generic stuff like tactical mag, hammer force rifling, and hand laid stock help out with. Weapon's base rate of fire is 600, which really is only going to matter slightly. But in any case, really nice recoil direction, a 36 magazine size, which feels a little old, right? Look at auto rifles, more modern auto rifles are in the high 40s to maybe even 50, but you can still get stuff in the 30s. Not like it's bad, it's just that definitely, I think, a signature of perhaps an older auto rifle. And aside from that, you know, it feels good as an auto rifle. So what makes Suros Regime? Well, the Suros Regime is Suros' kind of pride, if you will, and joy. It's their like pinnacle auto rifle, what they feel an auto rifle should do for you, which is basically always have your back. So Suros Legacy, the bottom half of each magazine deals bonus damage and has a chance to return health on kill. This part of that whole always having your back thing, you're in the middle of a firefight, your ammunition is running low on the gun, it's going to dish out some extra damage to help you get a quick breather, right? And not have to deal with maybe so many enemies on the field. With that, we have a perk column that has two perks in it. Now this is interesting and also reflects the old nature of Suros regime. This is a very Destiny 1 way to handle this, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But we have spinning up and we have dual speed receiver. Spinning up, holding down the trigger increases the rate of fire of this weapon, which is why I said the 600 rounds per minute thing only really matters a little bit. That's how it starts, but with spinning up it'll go much faster. Or you can have dual speed receiver. When aiming down sights, weapon's rate of fire slows while the weapon damage increases. It doesn't progressively slow, it slows down to a set level and the damage increases. Here, if you if you fire from the hip, I should say, instead of aiming down sights, it'll fire at its base speed. So this is where, Suros regime is also aiming to have your back. You're going to be a shock assault trooper, you're just going to be holding on the trigger and spraying to a whole room full of enemies. Weapon's going to spin up and really dish out some pretty good damage for you. You're going to be a bit more tactical about it. You want to be able to be more ammo efficient, perhaps. Well, aim down those sights with dual speed receiver, and you will be able to take those really controlled pot shots that are very nice, and they'll hit a bit harder. Again, Suros trying to have your back. It has a catalyst, which increases the chance for kills to regenerate health. So that's interesting. I don't know the exact chance we have now with the Suros, but it doesn't feel too bad. So that's what makes the Suros regime. It's an auto rifle that is kind of meant to be the pride and joy of the Suros weapon foundry, which is kind of what you get when they talk about the Golden Age tech brought to life by their engineers. It has a smart matter frame, which I guess is represented by the spinning up and a dual speed receiver. Perhaps also the extra damage, who knows. But in any case, conceptually, this weapon is meant to be a very serviceable auto rifle that's going to be very tactically flexible for you, so you can go ahead and meet the battlefield conditions head on. So let's see it in action and go over how that actually happens in practice, you could say. So with the weapon here in this one mode, I'm going to swap back and forth just to show you the first issue with Suros regime, and that is having spinning up and dual speed receiver as two separate perks in a column. This is very Destiny 1. Bully and Gemini did this, for example, as well in Destiny 1. In the early days of Destiny 2, I know Hardlight did this for the elemental changes, because that was a Destiny 2 thing, not a Destiny 1 thing for Hardlight. But very quickly, as the game evolved and grew, Bungie adapted the whole idea of alternate fire modes, allowing you to cycle between the different elemental choices for Hardlight. Borealis, I believe, did this from the get-go. I think that's maybe where they got it from. I could be mistaken, but Borealis does it too. And since then, we've had other weapons, which, by the way, Suros came out not in launch like Borealis and Hardlight, but I believe Warmind, so the later half of the year of the first year of Destiny 2. So in any case, weapons that have come out since this time with alternate firing capabilities, whether innately or something that is triggered, we're able to swap on the fly. So I think one of the things that doesn't help Suros is the fact that you can't swap on the fly. You have to go into the gun, pick one of these two perks, and manually select it, and then go back about your business. If you have a quick breather of downtime, not the end of the world, but nowhere near as seamless or as tactically flexible as swapping on the fly, like you can do for Servers +1, a bunch of other guns. And I think that just hampers the whole idea of the Suros regime having your back in any engagement and being tactically flexible if I have to go into my inventory, into the gun to change it, right? It feels very archaic, very analog. So I don't think that's helping things out. But that's not really what's holding it back, I think, the most. I think part of also what's holding it back is a combination of factors with most guns, I think you'll find. It's not just that. That definitely, I think, is going to help, because if you're trying to make use of Suros and really want to make use of Suros, you want to be able to swap between those modes from one room in a strike to the next, or whatever the case might be. both have their place, right? Spinning up is pretty popular in Crucible, but it works in PvE. And dual speed receiver, I like it in PvE a lot, but it also can be serviceable in Crucible. So you know what I mean? You can just swap around. But since you can't just swap around on the fly, you feel hampered. Also, this takes the weapon in two very different directions, doesn't it? Spinning up for the whole increased rate of fire thing, and dual speed receiver for really slowing the gun down when you're aiming down sights, to make it more precise. Now, this whole jack of all trades, tactical flexibility concept is a great concept. It always is, as a great theory for a piece of gear in whatever game. In practice, especially for Destiny, it's not, it'd be different if we were min-maxed in both directions. Like if you pick one, we're completely min-maxed in one way, you pick the other, completely min-maxed in the other. But we're not. And we're kind of in a much more min-maxed state and have been for some time with builds and loadouts and whatnot for Destiny here in Destiny 2. So the Suros kind of sits in the middle of that. Very effectively, very nicely, works very well. But I would rather, well, not so much me, I'm fine using the Suros, although I haven't used it in a long, long time, to be honest, hence why it's in this Forgotten Exotics video. But people would rather have a weapon that just doubles down on spinning up and shooting real fast, or a weapon that, really digs into the whole idea of slowing down and having a slow rate of fire, high accuracy, good hitting and stopping power. To be able to swap between the two is nice. I just feel like, on the one hand, spinning up, once it really gets going, you don't have that much ammunition left. And on the other hand, with dual speed receiver, I feel like we're kind of relying on the bottom half of the magazine dealing bonus damage for some of the tankier enemies out there. It works, but I think, especially given its analog nature of switching between the perks, people would rather a gun just have one of these perks and then have something else in its intrinsic trait or whatever, further doubling down on it, And part of it, I think, is the ammunition count. I think 45 would be a real good sweet spot, because you wouldn't feel the speed of dual speed receiver making you take a year and a day to reload, and you'd be able to really kind of feel that spinning up just a bit more, especially on some beefier enemies. In any case, I think just the meta and the shift of the way we use our weapons left Suros behind way before Subclass 3.0. You might see it here and there, more so in Crucible, just like in Destiny 1, I feel, but really not so much. It's just one of those weapons that it's a great mid-road, and unfortunately, the player base, we as Guardians, don't tend to like the mid-road that much. If we do, we want it in something like a machine gun, or something that's going to hit hard, good ammunition, and just be good for whittling things down, and then we're going to go for the the min-maxing concept on the other weapons. But maybe the seeds of the meta will shift, and the sandbox will come back around, and Suros could raise its head again. Well, how can we help it raise its head? Again, we don't want to just power creep this thing into a problem child, right? That's the easiest answer. Power creep, just up damage, up this, up whatever, make it, just buff it to the nth degree, make it the best thing since sliced bread, and then we have a whole new power creep problem to deal with. That's not what I'm looking to think about. So, with that said, I think the catalyst, that's fine. Upping the chance of health regen, that's fine. But I think there's really just two things that should happen together with this gun. Firstly, and most definitely, we need to rework the perk column for spinning up and dual speed receiver into some, I'm assuming, mega perk, or put Suros Legacy, something in Suros Legacy to allow us that will swap it on the fly between spinning up and dual speed receiver. I don't know how they can do it, but if they can make Monte Carlo stab things, they could do this. But they got to rework Suros so that we can toggle on the fly between spinning up and dual speed receiver. Everything else that has an alternate fire mode intrinsic, or once you meet certain preconditions like Vex Mythoclast, once you get enough kills or whatever, is able to on the fly swap, and that's swapping from a fusion rifle that shoots like an auto rifle into a linear fusion for 3 shots. I think we can take an auto rifle and swap between 2 different fire modes now, just like Cerberus plus 1 kind of does. So they need to implement that into the Suros regime, and that I think will really help a lot. It doesn't sound like it, but hopefully you can kind of see in the playing here. I have to constantly go into the inventory, constantly swap, and you know, you're not always going to have downtime like I had in this particular simulation safeguard thing. So, anyways, with that said, swapping on the fly, the first thing. The second thing that I really think needs to happen here is just that we need to spice up Suros a bit. It's meant to be, I feel anyway, the concept behind it is to be this tactically flexible thing that always has your back. Okay, let's do that. Letting a swap on fly will help with that. And hear me out, letting it stun 2 different champion types depending upon mode of fire will lend to that. Now this might seem like a lot, but considering depending upon certain effects weapons can do on top of any intrinsic stun they may or may not have, is allowing weapons to stun either champions without having an intrinsic stun at all, or is allowing to stun multiple champion types. Wicked Implement is a very extreme example, but if you slow something, if something can slow an overload champion, it stuns it. It slows with multiple precision hits. If you continue those precision hits, you will freeze it. When you shatter something that's frozen, you stun Unstoppable, right? So you shatter Unstoppable, you stun it. More work goes into things, sure, because it's not its whole point. It's not what it's trying to do. It just happens to do those effects. Well, you also have things such as volatile rounds to help out other exotics and even other legendaries, chill clip to help out legendaries and the like that don't have an intrinsic stun, or a weapon mod stun, I should say, from the or a weapons mod stun for the seasonal artifact or whatever. Why not let Suros regime stun 2 champions innately? Depending upon the mode of fire, of course. So spinning up, making it shoot faster, I think in spinning up mode it should be able to stun overloads. This rocket has overload rounds. And I think in dual speed receiver, if they can make it specifically while aiming down sights, great. If not, whatever. With dual speed receiver, I do think that should stun barrier champions. I just feel like thematically it makes sense for those two, for those different shooting styles. Also, Unstoppable is stunned the easiest right now, so let's not give it another way to be stunned. Anyways, sure, that might sound like a bit much, but I think it plays into the whole point of Suros regime, which to me, in my opinion, the way everything is kind of described for this gun and in this little lore tab and everything else, is that it's the weapon's prized amongst its rarity for its efficiency and its capability to be useful for you in most engagements, most any engagements. So shooting fast, shooting slower, stunning these 2 different champion types, it all works together alongside the bottom half of the magazine and the potential for health on kill. Plus, if it is overload barrier as a champion duo in a certain activity, you could just run the Suros, swap on the fly when you need it to stun the specific champion, and have a bit more of a beefier loadout. Also adding to its flexibility, allowing you to truly, flex some more muscle into your build out if you want to be able to stun both champion types and still bring some heat. In any case, I think that plus the ability to swap on the fly is really all that Suros needs to kind of turn heads a little bit and get some attention without power creeping it. We're not adding any extra damage. We're just letting us swap from the fly, and we're letting it stun champions depending upon which firing mode it's in. If they want to add a magazine increase, that would be great, but not really necessary. It's serviceable. I don't necessarily think this would be a problem, especially considering not only with certain weapon types can we stun champions, and that changes every season, and not only do certain other exotics have intrinsic champion stun, but our abilities. Slow could happen for just being in a stasis build, right? Same thing with Shatter. Our abilities that do effects will stun champions as well. So it's not like champion stun is as rare as it used to be. So I don't think giving Suros the ability to stun 2 different champions based on weapon fire mode is too much. But I'm really curious your thoughts, what you think. Do you think something else entirely should happen? Do you think setting 2 different champions is too much? Whatever the case is, share it all in the comment section and be a part of the conversation if you happen to stumble across this abandoned sector of the interweb. So that's all I got for Suros Regime. A fun auto rifle, but kind of suffering a little bit from being still in its analog state, I call it, of not being able to swap on the fly and being a middle road style, middle of the pack tactical flexibility concept. While great as a concept, tends to leave things kind of sitting on the sidelines as people tend to go for the more nth degree min-max concept. So anyways, that's all I got for you in this one. If you made it to the end of this video, that's awesome. Comment the word Suros alongside whatever else you might want to say so I know you made it to the very end. And until next time, Guardians, stay frosty.